All right, welcome everybody. Bernie Sanders has kept the Senate in session, and there is a debate starting right now over a vote on the veto of Trump's defense bill, possible debate about the $2,000 payments. Let's just first see what Mitch McConnell is saying, and then we'll talk.
Each household needs the help, whether or not their finances have changed dramatically this past year.
Oh, he sounds terrible.
Yesterday, Secretary Mnuchin announced households should begin receiving these payments as early as today and this week. That is more good news to a lot of people. After Congress and the administration finalized the bipartisan bill, the president expressed interest in further expanding non-targeted direct payment. So, to ensure the president was comfortable signing the bill into law, the Senate committed to beginning one process that would combine three of the president's priorities: larger direct checks, a repeal of Section 230 of the Communications Decency.
So this is the poison pill that Mitch McConnell is setting up. Let's listen and then I'll explain.
Three of the president's priorities in one Senate process. That was the commitment, and that's what happened yesterday when I introduced text reflecting just what the president had in fact requested.
The poison pill.
Now, Mr. President, House and Senate Democrats want something very different. As they tried to do countless times in the past 4 years, Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer are trying to pull a fast one on the president and the American people. First of all, they're hoping everyone just forgets about election integrity.
So remember that Trump wants the $2,000. It's not, Nancy and Chuck are trying to pull a fast one. Well, why aren't you addressing the fact that Trump wants the $2,000?
Democrats have tried to warp what President Trump actually laid out.
Well, warp. $2,000, $2,000. That's very precise.
The wisdom of borrowing hundreds of billions more to send out more non-targeted money, including to many households that have suffered no loss of income during the crisis. COVID-19 has not affected all households equally, not even close. It's hardly clear that the federal government's top priority should be sending thousands of dollars to, for example, a childless couple making well into six figures who've been comfortably teleworking all year.
So what he's picking out there is if you have a couple where each person makes $70K, they make $140, which puts you under the $150 limit for a couple. And the argument is they'd be fine with $1,200. They don't need $4,000. But of course, this is a completely myopic and ridiculous argument where you always, anytime they want to justify not giving people money, this is the equivalent of Reagan's welfare queen with a Cadillac. 12 kids or whatever who never existed, right? This is how they always attack the so-called free ridership issue with any kind of social insurance. Important not to fall for it. You always have to draw the line somewhere. No matter where you draw the line, you could say, well, what about this example just on one side of the line or this example just on the other side of the line? Not new.
Speaker Pelosi and Democratic leader could look at households in New York and California who make $300,000 in households where nobody has been laid off, where earnings did not even drop during the past year.
Again, all of this he's talking about, couples with no kids who are doing okay because they work from home, which of course is not the majority of the people that are targeted by this.
Seize the game here. These are the same Democrats who proudly blocked the entire aid package for months.
Oh God.
Because
remember, that's a lie. In May, the Democrats already had proposals. Ro Khanna had a proposal. You guys are too informed to fall for that.
$1,000, regardless of whether they've experienced any disruption at all this past year. Even the liberal Washington Post today is laughing at the political left for demanding more huge giveaways with no relationship.
Well, people getting banned
need.
Already.
Here's what the Washington Post wrote. Especially wrong-headed is the progressive left, spearheaded by Senator Bernie Sanders, who
now cell phones
the
are ringing.
$2,000 as aid to desperate Americans, despite huge amounts destined for perfectly comfortable families. That's from the editors of the Washington Post. The Wall Street Journal, usually their opposite number, actually agrees. These non-targeted checks are unnecessary, and struggling households can access targeted support like expanded jobless benefits, food stamps, child care subsidies, and much more.
I mean, food stamps is silly. You actually, many of the people that are targeted by something for those earning under 75K are they make too much to get food stamps. Like this is a sort of it's sort of like a verbal diarrhea, gish gallop kind of thing. Where none of this is not a coherent speech, as you probably can tell.
Back to its pre-pandemic levels, if not higher. If specific struggling households need still more help after the huge historic package that was just signed into law 4 days ago
Huge package.
has taken effect, then what they will need is smart, targeted aid, not another fire hose of borrowed money that encompasses other people
Fargos
who are doing just fine. So in my view, colleagues like Senator Cornyn and Senator Toomey have pointed this out persuasively. But more broadly, here's the deal. The Senate is not going to split apart the three issues that President Trump linked together just because Democrats are afraid to address two of them.
Oh, that is funny.
The Senate's not going to be bullied into rushing out more borrowed money into the hands of Democrat rich friends.
Imagine having the audacity to talk about borrowed money when Trump has exploded the deficit more than any president in history. Yeah, borrowed money.
And a lot more targeted relief for those who need help the most. We're going to stay smart, we're going to stay focused, and we're going to continue delivering on the needs for our nation. Now, Mr. President, I move to proceed to calendar number 480S3985.
The clerk will report the motion.
Motion to proceed to calendar number 480S3985, a bill to improve and reform policing practices, accountability, and transparency.
I understand that there are two bills at the desk due a second reading in block.
Clerk will read the titles of the bills for the second time.
S5085, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to increase the additional 2020 recovery rebates, to repeal Section 230 of the Communications Act of 1934, and for other purposes. H.R. 9051, an act to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to increase recovery rebate amounts to $2,000 for individuals.
There it is.
And for other purposes.
In order to place the bills on the calendar under the provisions of Rule 14, I'd object to further proceeding in block.
Objection having been heard, the bills will be placed on the calendar.
Now,
So Mitch wanted the discussion of that 2000 done away with. There was an objection, so now it will be put on the calendar.
I was prepared this afternoon to speak about the business the Senate must address, and I will do that. But first, I must respond to the recent announcement by the junior senator from Missouri that he intends to contest the certified votes of the Electoral College.
This was the other
when
thing I was
Congress
going to talk with
meets
you guys
count those
about.
votes next week. The process for electing American presidents is provided for in our Constitution and laws. The process has been followed fully, fairly. The results have been duly certified by the governors of the states, and they have been reviewed and confirmed by the courts many times over. The result is that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won the election by overwhelming margins in both the popular vote and electoral vote. The Biden-Harris ticket received more than 81 million votes, more than any ticket in American history. That was over 7 million more votes.
Okay, so we're kind of following the generalities of the proceedings here. I don't know that we need to listen to every word, but let me tell you guys what's going on. So we have three here's the schedule basically for next week as we enter 2021. These streams have all been scheduled. So Monday, and I'm leading up to what is being discussed. Monday night, we will have Donald Trump's final rally before leaving office. Okay, this has already been scheduled, and this will be in Georgia on Monday night. Tuesday night, we are going to have for you live results from the Georgia Senate election. That's Tuesday night. And then Wednesday, January 6th, this is all scheduled. It's all on the channel. We'll be live streaming all of these elements. On the 6th is the formal vote. The formal counting of the vote okay, of the electoral vote, which will be presided over by Vice President Mike Pence. Now, we expected that there would likely be some Republicans in the House who would stand up and object to the counting of certain votes, or maybe the totality, maybe in a certain state in the House. What we have now learned is that one Republican senator, Josh Hawley, who's disgusting. I mean, the worst of the worst of what exists. He plans to stand as a member of the Senate in objection to the counting of certain electoral votes. And when that happens, when you have an objection in the House and an objection in the Senate, the joint session, which is House and Senate together, they separate and they do 2 hours of debate in the House and 2 hours of debate in the Senate before each body votes as to whether they want to sustain this objection, preventing a counting of the ballots or not. Now, a couple of different things to talk about here. First of all, this is not going to change the outcome of the election. Okay, so I think it's important for me to just remind you that this is a coup attempt, that it's not going to work. So for people who are still very, very anxious, you can relax. However, it's possible that there are going to be a number of different attempts, and the concern is that these may combine with violence from those unwilling to accept the reality. But so the expected schedule would be 1 p. East, 10 a. West on Wednesday. We're going to have all of this live for you, and I hope you'll cover it with us. The process will start with Mike Pence, who's scheduled to leave the country hours after this is done on Wednesday. They are going to start this process. Josh Hawley is expected to object. Some members of the House are expected to object. This will temporarily stop the count, and the bodies will separate and debate on their own. Now, how long that's going to go on Wednesday, I don't really know, but that's the gist of what we are expecting. Okay, so let's listen to a little more of Chuck Schumer. I have super chats to read. I have vaccine updates. I have a whole bunch of different things to talk about.
Because it doesn't address an unrelated social media issue. Think about it for a moment. The president vetoed a pay raise to living American soldiers in order to defend the honor of dead Confederate traitors. Well, the Senate will soon have an opportunity to override the president's objection and do right by those brave Americans who wear the uniform. Now, as I said yesterday, there are two major issues before the Senate right now. The annual...
Hey guys, honestly, there's a million streams of this that you can go and watch. So, people just telling me to shut the F up. You're just getting banned. It's just silly. Like this is my channel. You understand, right? Like if you just want to stream with no commentary, go to C-SPAN.
There's a very simple solution to this dilemma. Leader McConnell should bring both measures up for a vote and let the chips fall where they may. I believe both measures, the defense override and the $2,000 checks to American families, will both pass. But at the very least, the Senate deserves the opportunity for an up or down vote on increasing the individual payments to the American people. So at the end of my remarks, I will ask the Senate to set a time tonight for a vote on the House bill.
Could be a long day.
To provide $2,000 checks. The Republican leader objected to a similar request I made yesterday, and it appears he may be considering a different bill that packages stimulus checks with other unrelated and partisan policies. So I want to be very clear about one thing. There is no other game in town beside the House bill. The only way to get to the American people the $2,000 checks they deserve and need is to pass the House bill and pass it now. The House is recessed for the year. Any modification or addition to the House bill cannot become law before the end of this Congress.
True.
It's a way to kill the bill. Make no mistake about it. Either the Senate takes up and passes the House bill, or struggling American families will not get $2,000 checks during the worst economic crisis in 75 years.
And they're not going to get them.
Over the past few days, the idea of increasing direct payments to the American people has united folks from all points of the political spectrum. And I salute the senator from Vermont for the good job he has done.
That's Bernie.
In bringing this forward to the American people's attention. An overwhelming bipartisan majority in the House supports the $2,000 checks. Senate Democrats strongly support these 2,000 checks.
Trump
and
does.
Our unlikely ally, President Trump, this morning tweeted 2,000 ASAP. For once, Democrats agree with something on President Trump's Twitter feed. Let's send $2,000 ASAP to working Americans who are facing the hardest and darkest days of the pandemic. After all the insanity that Senate Republicans have tolerated from President Trump, his attacks on the rule of law and independent judiciary, the conduct that led to his impeachment, is this where Senate Republicans are going to draw the line? $2,000 checks to the American people? That is a bridge too far? Please. For the awareness of my colleagues, we can have this vote tonight and send the bill directly to the president's desk for signature. We can vote on the NDAA bill tonight and finish the Senate's business before the end of the year.
Business.
All it takes is our Republican colleagues consenting to a simple vote on the House bill to provide $2,000 checks to the American people. Yes or no? Up or down? Do you support sending $2,000 to the American people or not? Let's have the vote. And so, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent
That's not going to
that
happen.
the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of H.R. 9051, a bill received from the House to increase recovery rebate amounts to $2,000 for individuals, that the bill be read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Object.
Objection is heard. Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved. Under the previous order, the Senate will be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to...
Don't you guys get the feeling that these are all people really working hard for what's best for the American people? Great use of tax time, huh? Let's listen to Bernie.
With what Senator Schumer
Schumer.
said. And what he said goes beyond economics. It goes beyond the desperation that
This should be
tens
good.
of millions of working families are facing. It goes beyond the struggles of the people of Vermont or Kentucky. And let me just make it clear for the majority leader that 10 out of the poorest 25 counties in the United States of America are located in Kentucky. So maybe my colleague, the majority leader, might want to get on the phone and start talking to working families in Kentucky and find out how they feel.
Hey, Mitch just won. He's good for 6 years. His constituents will have forgotten about this by then.
The $2,000 check per adult. And I have the strong feeling that the people of Kentucky will respond no differently than the people of Vermont or New York. This last poll that I saw had 78% of the American people saying that they wanted and needed that type of help. But this discussion, frankly, is not just about the economic struggling of working families in this country. It's not just the massive levels of income and wealth inequality. It's about basic democracy. Now, what we have to do here on the floor, whether it's Senator Schumer or Senator McConnell or me, we got to talk in legalese. That's the language of the United States Senate. And the stuff sounds pretty complicated to the average person. But all that Senator Schumer and I are asking of the majority leader is a very simple request. Allow the members of the United States Senate to cast a vote.
Understand, Mitch isn't suppressing the payments. He's even suppressing just a vote on the payments.
I see Senator Toomey here. He has been clear about it. I suspect he will vote against it. I respect his opinion. But all that we are asking for is a vote. What is the problem? In the House, over 2/3 of the members of that body, including 44 Republicans, voted to say that at this time of economic desperation, working families deserve help and they deserve a $2,000 check.
Bernie calling for the
And
slides.
as Senator Schumer just indicated, we have a very unlikely
My favorite thing about the Senate is these huge, oversized printouts.
He has disagreed with Trump more times than I have. And yet here is what the leader of the Republican Party says. He says $2,000 ASAP. So even
I don't love the use of cropping. I think some of the negative space is miscalibrated, but I still like it for comedic value.
So what all of this comes down to, my fellow Americans, is not even whether you agree with Senator Schumer and myself and 78% of the American people, or you agree with Senator McConnell, and I suspect Senator Toomey, that's fine. It's called democracy. We have differences of opinion. All that I am asking is give us a vote. What's the problem? Allow the United States senators to cast the vote as to whether or not they are for the $2,000 check or whether they're against it. We will need, as I understand it, 60 votes to win. That's a big hurdle. I don't know that we're going to win. There are a number of Republicans, to their credit.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell doesn't want Republicans being put on record in conflict with Trump.
Maybe we will lose. I think that would be unfortunate. But all that I am asking for right now is give us the opportunity to vote. What is the problem with that? So, Mr. President, with that, I will now go to Senate legalese and say, quote, I ask unanimous consent that at 11:30 a.m. on Thursday, December 31st,
Right.
the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of H.R. 9051 to provide a $2,000 direct payment to the working class,
Object.
that the bill be considered, read a third time, and the Senate vote on passage of the bill without intervening action or debate. Further, that if passed, the motion to reconsider be considered, made, and laid upon the table. Further, that immediately following the
Object.
vote on H.R. 9051, the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of the veto message on H.R. 6395, that the Senate immediately vote on passage of the bill, the objections of the President to the contrary notwithstanding, with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Mr. President,
The senator for Pennsylvania.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object, let me start by pointing out we are not in the same place that we were in back in March.
No, or worse.
Our economy is in nothing like the situation we faced during a moment in March when this body came together and voted unanimously, I believe, for the most extraordinary aid package, financial stimulus bill, however you care to characterize it, in the history of the world, by far. Remember where we were.
I think just about every other European country, plus Canada, plus many other Asian countries would disagree with that.
The economy had stopped functioning because state governments around the country decided they had to close it down. We can discuss, we can argue about whether that was a good decision or not, but given the limited knowledge we had about the nature of the COVID-19 threat, it was deemed to be the right thing to do. So
All right, so we're going to mute this for a bit. As you know, I don't think we need to listen to every one of these toxic Republican screeds, but the Republicans don't even want to vote on the $2,000 check. So I will mention a few different things. If you're just joining us, what Democrats are asking for here is just a vote on the $2,000 checks, and Republicans are doing everything they can to object to that. Okay, Democrats would like a vote tomorrow morning at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, New Year's Eve, right before wrapping for the year, quite literally. Now, in the middle of all of this, we are starting to see the vaccination program extremely slowly build, where the United States now has vaccinated 2.32 million people on a first dose. That's 0.7% of the population. And at the current rate, it would take 10 years to reach herd immunity. We're vaccinating about 1 million people per week, and we need to be vaccinating 3.5 million per day. So that's where we are right now. Now, meanwhile, the numbers are, again, very ugly, with 3,400 deaths yesterday. As some of you may remember, we did have this dip right around the holiday, and it, in all likelihood, is just a reporting dip, and I expect that we will see it spike again. I'm expecting the spike on cases to sort of end or to start diminishing more permanently around January 10th to January 15th. And then from the standpoint of deaths, as you can see, we did have this dip during the holiday, but then spiking yesterday. And my expectation is deaths will peak right around February 1st, which will be just a beautiful, beautiful birthday gift for me right around that time. So that's where we are right now. And every indication that Republicans are sort of done with all of this, and they will do the best they can just to object to everything. So let me get, as we just, I don't think we need Pat Toomey's rant. We'll get back to the procedure once Democrats continue trying to actually move this forward. I do want to say thank you to the 6 people who grabbed Twitch subs during the intervening time. And also a big thank you to Jamie Danielle Knox, who signed up at joinpacman.com and is new member number 7 today. Now, it is believed, I don't know if you guys know this, it is on the agenda for the Senate here that after they deal with the $2,000 payments, they're expecting to ask for passage with unanimous consent to ban all of my membership discounts above 50% starting in the new year. I do expect objections. Bernie wants those discounts, so I'm told Bernie will object, but there will be an effort made to do that. So the point is, this is a great opportunity before the year is out to take advantage of that coupon code Fresh Start for 70% off a membership at joinpacman.com. We know Bernie's with us on the discounts, but unfortunately, there is a movement, a concerted movement to wrap that in with Section 230 and decimate, quite literally decimate our membership. So that is upcoming. All right, let me read a few super chats. I don't want to miss these as we wait for Pat Toomey to turn this back over. Marika says, thanks for your sane reporting during this insane year. How are the 2 seats in Georgia polling? Is it looking good or excellent? P.S. Good haircut. Yeah, I did get a haircut. It very, very badly needed. Listen, I think it is going to be a real uphill battle to win both of those seats in Georgia. If I were a betting man, I would say Democrats get 1. I think 2 is a big uphill battle, and I think we've got to get every vote out. Very, very important. Chakaseki says, should we expect Congressman Letlow's Twitter account to posthumously continue to tweet like the ghost of Herman Cain? Yes. Hold on. Let's go back here.
Senator for Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. President, very much. And I rise to echo the sentiments of the senator from Vermont. He is right.
Ed Markey.
The Republicans are wrong on this issue, on every single part of this debate. Senator Sanders is right. The Republicans are wrong.
Right.
We're in the middle of an unprecedented crisis in our country. We have a healthcare crisis. We have an unemployment crisis. We have a hunger crisis. We have a housing.
All right, so no malarkey markey outlining the situation, and we have a sense of what he's going to say. Congressman-elect Letlow died of COVID, and Chakaseki pointing that out. Tell him, Bernie, says Trish. Devanimation says these people are okay with giving $82 billion to universities and private schools, but not even enough for 1 month's rent to individuals. It's the unfortunate reality. Aaron calling Mitch McConnell a foppish dandy. Wow. Nicole says Happy New Year. Amy says 2K would be a godsend. I'm on food stamps and only make $8K a year, 10K loans. Georgia, please vote blue, please. And then Jacob congratulating me on the haircut. I appreciate that. I know that there are people still holding out hope, but I don't expect that this $2,000 vote is even going to go anywhere. It's unfortunate, but I wish I were more optimistic about it. Thanks to Brian DeZurich for signing up at joinpacman.com. Let's get back to a little bit of Ed Markey here.
To create a vaccine. But because for 7 months the Republicans have refused to fund the public health system of our country at the state and local level, we have Operation Snail Speed to put the vaccinations in the arms of the American people.
Yep.
It was anticipatable. Tony Fauci and others were warning us back in May, in June, in July. There would be a second wave, and the second wave could be bigger. We got the warning. The Republicans refused to heed that warning. And here we are now without the public health infrastructure to deal with the overflow capacity in emergency rooms and ICUs all across the country, while simultaneously asking those same medical institutions to put vaccinations in the arms of healthy people without the resources provided by the federal government to help those states and local communities to deal with that crisis. Sometimes Daniel Patrick Moynihan would say that when you deal with an issue, you deal with it with benign neglect. If you don't want to help or you don't want to hurt, deal with benign neglect. What's happened with the Republicans this year is that they've created a program which is designed neglect.
Right.
It's an actual plan not to provide the funding, not to provide the help for those families, for those communities.
Markey's so passionate, the N95 can't even stay on his nose. Look at that. That is passion.
Top of that, to put this extra burden of putting vaccinations.
Oh, sorry. Not an N95.
But without the extra resources. And what do? On the Republican side, they throw out these red herrings, so many red herrings that you need to build an aquarium in the well here of the Senate in order to deal with all of them. That gets away from the central issue. Yes or no, up or down, will you provide $2,000 to Americans who are going to need it through what Tony Fauci is saying
Simple
will
vote.
be the worst part
Simple.
of this pandemic? Yes or no, up or down, where do they stand on this issue? Here's what we do know. Republicans seem more focused on funding the Defense Department than they do funding the defenseless in our country.
Right.
And Americans are becoming more defenseless as each day goes by. The headlines are screaming that this panic that is absolutely understandable and based upon fact is sweeping our country. There is protection which the federal government should be providing to these families. We hear it. They're hungry. They could be without their homes. The addiction crisis is rising. They need help in their families.
You know, one of the things I've learned in covering politics for a long time is it's very difficult to get others to care about someone other than themselves if that's not in their nature. It's really difficult. Sometimes if like their kid, if something happens to their kid, You can get them to care about someone other than themselves because it's, someone that connected to them personally. But you really can't make others be good people. That's one of the big things we're up against right now.
They're having to make impossible decisions to whether to put food on the table or keep the heat on through the cold winter months. And the United States government has an obligation to help working people who, through no fault of their own, are seeing all of the things that they care about, all of the success that they have worked for, and all the financial security they have earned be washed away.
How much are we spending, by the way, on the Guardians of the Galaxy? And there's a debate over 600 versus 2. I mean, come on.
Nice.
Come on, guys.
The damage to these families is anticipatable. We can see what is unfolding. Dr. Fauci is telling us we're at the worst part of the pandemic and it's going to continue. So let us act in anticipation. Louis Pasteur used to say that chance favors the prepared mind.
Right. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Telling us, let us prepare. Let us help families prepare for what is about to arrive. Just in Massachusetts alone, 21,000 new people applied for unemployment insurance in the week before Christmas. Food banks across Massachusetts, across the country, are seeing double-digit increases in demand with families who never faced food insecurity before. People are literally starving, cold, and without homes. And meanwhile, the majority leader and Republican leadership would rather head home for the new year and ignore the financial and health crises that are taking a toll on our families. For millions of Americans, this will be a New Year's holiday where they won't know if they can put food on the table that night.
This is just sport for them. That's what Ed Markey doesn't seem to get that. Or I know he has to pretend not to.
To working Americans would be too expensive. That it would inflate our national deficit, that our budgets are already bloated. I have to ask, though, where was this outrage when
Yes.
Republicans blew up our national deficit
Right.
to give a $1.5 trillion tax cut to build?
Imagine how do they even claim they're worried about borrowing money to cover the checks? Like, how is that even an argument when Trump set records for deficit growth?
Next meal will come from the eviction notice on the front door, or losing health care in the midst of this crisis. And Americans are actually tired of being told that $600 is, quote, sufficient as an amount of money, as relief, as billionaires receive their tax breaks and grow their wealth.
By the way, great job, moderators on YouTube and Twitch. Just massive dumps of ban hammers happening. We've got a lot of trolls in the chat. They're getting very desperate as we get closer to the inauguration of Joe Biden. And moderators going to have to be working overtime on these.
When they can see tax breaks going to those companies that are actually laying off workers. And Americans are tired of being let down by their government time and time again, as Donald Trump and his Republican allies have abandoned them during this response to the pandemic. Americans need support. They need to be able to trust their government, and they need $2,000 now. So that's the issue. Yes or no, up or down, on providing $2,000 to Americans.
Simple.
To help them make it through the worst
Just strike and
part
strike and
of
strike.
this crisis. So, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that at 12:30 p.m. on Thursday, December 31st,
Oh, he wanted
the
at
Senate
12:30.
proceed to the immediate consideration of H.R. 9051, a bill to provide $2,000 direct payment to the working class. That the bill be considered read a third time and the Senate vote on passage of that bill without intervening action or debate. And further, that if passed, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, and that immediately following the vote on H.R. 9051, the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of the veto message on H.R. 9395, that the Senate immediately vote on passage of the bill, the objections of the President to the contrary notwithstanding, with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Mr. President,
The Senator for Texas.
Oh, God.
reserving the right to object, Mr. President. Speaker Pelosi's
second bite at the apple.
So before we get back to John Cornyn, let me just show you. I covered this the other day. This is just disgusting. He's a Texas guy. Look at the brisket that this guy subjected his family to. Look at this. Hold on, here it is. Can you imagine being from Texas and claiming that this is a brisket? This is John Cornyn's brisket from his Christmas. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And I don't even know how that is. That maybe that shit's legal in Texas, but I've never seen anything like it.
In this pandemic, the median household in my state is $60,000. And the Speaker wants to send taxpayer-funded assistance to folks earning nearly 6 times that much. Even the Washington Post editorial board agrees this.
No self-respecting individual would serve that brisket to their family.
Receiving a paycheck during this pandemic, like government employees and people who simply by virtue of their job have been put out of work and not receiving any income or maybe at best unemployment compensation. The Speaker's bill isn't about targeting folks who've lost their jobs or...
So we're going to mute Cornyn for now because I have things to catch up on with you guys. They're all making the same argument. So they've picked up on this meme that, yeah, the brisket is criminal. They've picked up on this meme that the payments aren't targeted. They're not targeted. Well, yes, they are. They're targeted to people earning under $75,000. And they'll say, well, but they're not targeted to people who have lost their jobs. No, unemployment is to those people. So that's in addition to. They've not actually said why we shouldn't be doing both. They're just saying that the payments aren't targeted and that's objectively bad. Well, it's incorrect that they're not targeted. They are targeted based on income. It's just ridiculous. I do want to say, as we have breached 10,000 live viewers on YouTube, let me just do some quick thank yous for people who signed up on my website. Gabriel Baker, new joinpacman.com member, Rick Carter, Karen Grimaldi, Fiona Reddle, Cleet Torres, and Brett Arrieta, okay? And that puts us at 14. Remember, Joe Biden may make my membership discounts illegal, which is why it's very important to grab one today.
Or in the
This is Dick Durbin.
of their lives. $2,000. Characterized a few moments ago by my friend from Texas as Speaker Pelosi's idea. Well, I might remind him it was...
Oh, sorry. And I forgot to thank DJ and Demixty for the Twitch subs as well.
...quickly as possible. And though I don't often come to the floor to agree with the president, he's right. In this instance, he's clearly right. And what will we do now? We are calling senators back together in Washington from far reaches across the United States. This morning, I received some email and text messages from some of our colleagues hopping on airplanes at 6 a.m. on the West Coast, heading out here to face a vote. What is this vote all about? Well, first is to override the veto of the president when it comes to the defense authorization bill.
By the way, I think it's important to address, and I don't, we're not really missing any. The substance here is just Democrats want a vote and Republicans don't, and we'll see where it kind of goes. There are some people who have been sort of hesitant to say, "Hey, Trump's right on 2000." He may be pushing for it for cynical reasons or for to hurt political enemies, but he's still right about 2000. The $600 enhanced unemployment that was done with the first round of stimulus, that was really good. That was a good thing to do. I think it's important that we not listen. 99.999% of the things Trump has done are disgusting, terrible things. He's a global shame. He deserves to be removed, and he's being removed, and he lost. There's no, listen, you would have to, it would be hard not to just stumble across something that's correct. And so let's just say it. Like, listen, Trump is actually right on this one, whether it's because he's trying to get revenge on someone or hurt someone, whatever. Democrats are right on 2000 and Trump is right on 2000 and Republicans are wrong. It doesn't mean you give Trump 4 more years. In fact, he's already been told, no, you're not getting him. I think, it's like, come on, guys, there's no big problem here.
Alternative, which has any ghost of a chance to help the families of this country with this $2,000 benefit. The only thing that will do it, the only one thing that will do it, is this bill that has already passed the House of Representatives. The House is in recess. When they're going to return is uncertain. They certainly don't have the time to work through the regular order of business and consider any new legislation, even if we could send it to them in time, which I believe is very doubtful. And so it's up to Senator McConnell.
All right, sorry, people are getting mad. Thanks to Glenn Coco for the Twitch sub, Really Bad Wizard, and Reggae Train. Appreciate all of you.
Bring it to the Senate for a vote. Let's have this vote up or down. Let the Democrats and Republicans express their will on behalf of the families of this country. I couldn't agree more with the senator from Massachusetts and his characterization of what families face across this country, and certainly in my home state of Illinois. I just wonder if any of the Republican senators who are downplaying this economic crisis facing these families have really looked into the issue. This morning in the senator's home state of Texas, they showed an early morning television show and the cars that were lining up for food banks.
Right.
Long lines of people waiting for food banks. And they interviewed some of them in Texas who told heartbreaking stories of how they once were volunteers at the same food bank and now were dependent on it for a helping hand if they were going to be able to feed their families. These were people who were not lazy at all. Misfortune has come their way, and the question is, will we help? This is our opportunity today with the measure that passed the House of Representatives. Not some theory of some legislation might be considered tomorrow. Today, let's have this vote today, this evening. When the senators have returned, let's determine whether or not this House-passed measure for $2,000 is going to be enacted into law and sent to the president, who is clearly anxious to sign it. That, to me, is the reasonable thing to do. In fact, it may even sound like the United States Senate taking a vote on a timely issue after a debate. We do it so seldom around here. I think we've lost our muscle memory when it comes to this activity in the Senate. It's time to return to it. I thank the senator from Vermont, the senator from Massachusetts, and of course the Democratic leader for bringing this issue before us this afternoon. But it shouldn't end with our great speeches. It ought to end with an important vote for the people of this
President, would the
country.
senator from Illinois yield for a question?
Happy to yield.
Senator for Texas.
Mr. President, I wonder if the senator from Illinois would consider pairing their request for $2,000 direct payment with a liability shield provision that would guard businesses that have been operating in good faith and following the guidelines put out by public health and government
poison pill
institutions, and preserve a
We'll
right
explain
to
this
sue
in a
for
second.
reckless and willful disregard of the rights for others. Would the senator consider pairing those two together?
I would say, in response to my colleague, I know his passionate defense of the notion for immunity from liability for corporations in America. He has introduced a lengthy bill on the subject. I don't believe that is consistent with keeping this nation safe during the pandemic.
Give me a break, dude.
And certainly is not responsive to any onslaught of lawsuits. The senator might be interested to know that the number of medical malpractice cases filed in the name of COVID-19 since the onset of this current pandemic is slightly higher than the total number of lawsuits filed by Donald Trump in protesting the results of the November 3rd election. This is not a tsunami of lawsuits. I believe we can take reasonable measures to support and defend those corporations and companies which are making a good faith effort to comply with public health standards and protect their employees and customers.
Beautiful.
His bill, I'm afraid, goes way too far.
Mr. President,
The senator for Vermont.
Let me concur with my friend
Uh-oh.
from Illinois on the issue. And I have a question.
He's
to my
not on
colleague
mic.
from Texas. Very simple question. You are concerned about the issue of corporate liability. I get that. I happen not to agree with you. You're entitled to your opinion.
Uh-oh.
You may or may not be concerned about Section 230 of the 1996 Federal Telecommunications Bill.
This is getting good.
That's fine, too. We may have a discussion about how we protect American democracy. It's a good discussion as well.
Yeah.
But I have the strong feeling, Senator Cornyn, that in Texas, as in Vermont, you know what? People are really not talking about corporate liability. It's a good issue. It's an important issue. I don't think they're talking about Section 230. What I think they are talking about
Here
is
we
the
go.
senator from Illinois just said, how they're going to feed their kids today. That is the issue.
Rescued microphone.
And what I would ask my friend from Texas
Beautiful.
is, what is your problem with allowing the Senate to vote on whether or not we are going to allow Americans, working class people, to get a $2,000 check. No, I gather that when that vote comes to the floor, and I hope it comes immediately, you'll vote no. And you'll explain to the people of Texas why you voted that way. That's called
what he doesn't want to do.
democracy.
Oh, my
I respect that. But what is your problem with allowing the Senate to have a freestanding vote? There are a number of people on your side, Republicans, who have already come forward and say, yeah, they want to vote for this $2,000 check.
Right.
Now, if you want to deal with corporate liability, that's fine. Let's deal with it at some point.
Separately.
Bring forth the bill. We can vote on it up or down. All that we are asking for is a simple up or down vote on the issue that tens of millions of people are talking about right now. Will they survive economically
Bernie's on
in the
fire.
midst of this terrible pandemic? So I asked my colleague from Texas, what is the problem with allowing the U.S. Senate to vote on the bill passed by the House? And I yield to my colleague from Texas.
Right.
Mr. President.
The Senator for Texas.
Mr. President, I would say to our colleague from Vermont, I have no problem with providing assistance, whether it's to public health officials
Wasn't the
who
question.
are trying to struggle with this pandemic, or to provide money for the research, for therapeutics, or
I think we just witnessed a murder.
distributed around the country. I have no objection to direct payments to individuals. I voted for the $1,200 direct payment contained in the CARES Act. I voted for the additional money that's provided for in the most recent COVID-19 legislation. But this legislation that the senator from Vermont is advocating would benefit households with annual income over $350,000. They would get this money. And I would say that one way to deal with this, because of course we negotiated back and forth on the last COVID-19 bill, nobody got everything.
What's the math of that? I thought it was just $75K or $150 for a couple. Where is he getting that it would go to people earning $350? Anybody know?
People making up to $350,000, why not couple it
I just
with
don't understand
liability
that.
protection for people who are acting in good faith? This isn't just about corporations and our colleagues across the aisle.
So let me explain what's going on now that we're understanding the situation. So what Republicans want to do is they want to do a poison pill so that Democrats don't agree to join these two things. Democrats just want to vote on increase. You keep everything the same, but payments go from $600 to $2,000. No big, just a disagreement on a number. Very simple. What Republicans want to add in is an immunity shield to corporations for what is essentially, they say who have done the right thing, but they basically want it to be so that if customers or employees get COVID because a business opens when it shouldn't and does things it shouldn't do, that you can't sue them for that. Now, what they of course ignore is that we have a system now where if a lawsuit is frivolous, it's thrown out. In other words, without passing any blanket immunity, just with the law as it is now, if you sue a business and say, I got COVID here and I want to sue you, you still have to prove that there was negligence. And so you don't actually need that law. It's a handout to corporations. Let me get back to Bernie.
It's a legitimate debate. You know what? Bring it to the floor. Let's vote it up or down. I will vote against it. You will vote for it.
Right. Separate them.
But I asked you a very simple question, not linking things together. Nobody in the real world understands that stuff.
Not going to answer.
That's inside the Beltway stuff. What people in the real world know, and I want to take a moment to read some of these statements.
Yes.
Because we have a lot of people on our social media, and we asked the American people, the other day, we said, tell me, what would a $2,000 check mean to you? What's going on in your lives? And in just over 24 hours, I would say to my friend from Texas, nearly 6,000 people responded. And here is just what a few of them had to say. And we don't have, this is Twitter stuff, so I don't have their names here, and I wouldn't use it publicly anyhow, but this is what they say. One person writes, $2,000 is the difference between keeping our apartment and being evicted. Here's another. $2,000 means I can afford to feed my 3 kids. Another response, quote, it would mean not having to choose between rent and groceries or not having to ration my partner's meds, end quote. Another response, quote, I am raising my
Sorry, people
grandson
calling
with
the
medical
voicemail
needs.
line.
I am $4,000 behind on utilities. We need electricity to run his medical equipment, end quote. Here's another response. $2,000 would mean I wouldn't have to worry about making my mortgage payment this month and that I could get my medication, end quote. Another response, $2,000 would mean paying my rent and getting life-saving treatment because I can't afford the $50 copay through my work insurance just to see my neurologist right now.
Can you
End
imagine?
of quote. And on and on and on. Thousands of people responding. So I want to get back to the point that I want to again ask my friend from Texas.
Try.
You got a concern about corporate liability? Good issue. Bring it to the floor. Let's vote on corporate liability. I would yield for a question from my
If the
friend
Senate
from Illinois.
Yield for a question through the chair. I've listened to the figures that have been used on the floor about families that could qualify for the $2,000. It's my understanding that an individual with an income of $75,000 or less could qualify for the $2,000 payment.
Right.
And a joint return, husband and wife, $2,000 could be given to them if their income is under $150,000. Is that your understanding?
Understanding. And I think, as Republicans do, they're going to let it be. But I'll get back to my friend from Texas, Senator Cornyn. We're asking a simple question. You want to bring up corporate liability? Bring it up. You want to bring up Section 230? Bring it up. You want to bring up the man on the moon? Bring it up. But what the American people want now is an upward down no vote. Now you're going to vote against it if it comes to the floor. That's fine. It's your right.
But do
Explain
the
it
vote.
to the people of Texas. I will vote for it. But all that I am asking for is the right as a United States Senator to have the vote. And again, I ask you, what is your problem with members of the United States Senate, including a number of Republicans who have already indicated
Not
they would
gonna
like
answer.
to vote for this? What's your problem with bringing that up as a single standalone bill, not merged with corporate liability or anything else? What's your problem with that?
Mr. President.
Senator for Texas.
Mr. President, I would say to our colleague from Vermont, this money is not targeted to people who suffered financial losses. It is
we
not
heard that.
targeted to people who suffered financial losses.
It's targeted to people making under 75,000.
If they meet the financial requirements, other government employees who've suffered no financial loss during this pandemic.
We can't, this is not a both sides thing, right, guys? This is a disgusting individual. This is a vile person.
Government employees that have been receiving their full paycheck during this pandemic.
That's a good question. And then I will have to explain that to the people of the state of Vermont.
The Senator for Texas has the floor.
He asked me a question as I understood it.
The Senator for Texas.
John, did you ask me a question? Did I?
The Senator for Texas.
It was more of a rhetorical question, Mr.
Oh,
President.
it was rhetorical.
The Senator for Texas.
Mr. President, I wanted to come to the floor and talk about what strikes me as something akin to Groundhog Day.
Yeah. Trump's getting tagged on Twitter.
It's something I feel like we're living through here as we debate the same points over and over and over again.
Because they don't have a vote. He's like, why do we keep debating the same thing? Oh, right, we could just vote and be done with it, but which you won't do.
Partisan basis. We've already appropriated roughly $4 trillion in response to this pandemic. And it's appropriate that we have done so because this was a true public health crisis. But now this is, we're seeing politics creep.
Yeah, guys, can't you tell that when they did the money stuff before, things were bad, but we're kind of dealing with it now. Okay, isn't it obvious from this chart that we don't really need that much more money? Isn't it very clear? Just look at the death numbers, right? When we did the money stuff here, obviously now everything, why are we talking about money? This is crazy.
We've thrown small businesses and their employees a lifeline through the Paycheck Protection Program, and we were right to do so. We've invested in research and development, manufacturing.
All right, so let's get away from Cornyn a little bit, just so I know there's people eating while they watch, and this is probably not good to listen to. Let me just get caught up on thanking people I want to thank. Big thank you to Deflated Brady and Taz for the Twitch subs. I love that, and that puts us at 21. And then, in all seriousness, huge thank you. A bunch of people just signed up on my website with that great discount. I want to say thanks to Ben Barringer, Espen Langvik, Marianne Nielsen, Bear Madison, as well as Jerome Robbins and Deborah Montgomery, which puts us at 27. I really appreciate that. I know we're getting to the end of the year here, and really appreciate folks who are signing up. Let me read a few of the super chats. Cornyn's just not answering, so we'll get back to him. Victoria via super chat, liking Bernie, feel the burn. God bless you for continuing to fight in the U.S. Senate. Captain Mice says, I love the fact that Mitch calls it borrowed money because it's not. I see it as a tax break of $2,000 for most American people. I love your show, David. Greeting from the Netherlands. Matt says Section 230 has always been tied to the defense bill, hence the veto. Election fraud deals more with national defense. Fix the defense bill. Foo Rocker says that John Cornyn's brisket is absolutely not legal in Texas. Yeah, that's good to know. It certainly wouldn't be legal in my house. If somebody tries to bring that in, that is just not happening. And Radicon says this should be a no-brainer, and a bill is not even necessary to vote, and a bill not even necessary to vote on. Sad effing lot that can't empathize. As you say, David, simple. Republicans see rising numbers on charts, meaning a chance to get rich. We need a Robin Hood. And the first Aquarius says, just because one hasn't lost a job doesn't mean they haven't suffered financially. Parents have taken time off from work because kids are out of school. Yeah, but not only that, I think there's another important aspect of this. You can have the money is demand side stimulus. You can have a business type, like, for example, a restaurant, that even though its customers may be doing okay financially, the restaurant, because of lack of demand, has seen dramatically decreased revenue. So one of the things you can do is you give people money to spend in their local businesses. It's called demand side stimulus. So there's a whole bunch of other aspects to this that it's not clear that they don't understand, or if they don't care, or, you know, if they pretend not to understand. I don't really know. But yes, that's something we've talked about many times before.
In recent days, the president has expressed an interest in doing more. And I have no doubt that we will do more in this area. But Speaker Pelosi's bill goes far beyond what the president is talking about. For one, it would dramatically widen the pool of recipients, enabling wealthy households to qualify for relief checks. This is unacceptable and wasteful. When Congress provided the first round of direct payments through the CARES Act, we did so in a way that sent relief to the hardest hit Americans. Individuals who made up to $75,000 received the full $1,200, and the amount gradually declined as income increased and completely phased out at $99,000. We kept the same formula for the $600 payments provided for under the omnibus and further targeted the relief. Once again, those who made up to $75,000 will receive the full amount, and the amount phases out completely at $87,000. Under the CARES Act, a family of four earning up to $150,000 received $3,400. In the most recent rescue bill, the same family would receive an additional $2,400. This was the most effective and targeted way to ensure that assistance goes to those who actually need it, while avoiding sending taxpayer dollars, borrowed, I might add,
oh no,
to those who don't.
Borrowed.
The House passed legislation would provide $2,000 payments, but it doesn't have a similar structure to keep these payments targeted. Let me give you an example. If this bill were to become law, a person making $100,000 a year would receive a $750 check from the federal government, whether or not they lost income.
Is it because of the phase out? Is that what's going on?
Someone who used to make that much but was laid off or had reduction in their income, someone who's currently earning a six-figure salary would receive an additional $750. and $50 from American taxpayers. For families, the income barrier goes higher. As I mentioned a moment ago, if you have a family of 5 with an annual household income of $350,000 a year, that family would receive a stimulus check under the House-passed bill. Now, that's not being smart.
Family, I'd have to look at that. I don't know. I really don't know what he's talking about.
Needed. That's a giveaway to people who have not suffered any financial losses during this pandemic, and clearly not targeted at those who need the most help. I mentioned a moment ago that the median income for households in Texas is $60,000 a year. So this family of 5 is earning nearly 6 times as much and would still receive a check from taxpayers. That defies all common sense. Even the Washington Post editorial board dubbed this policy as wasteful.
Now, this is an interesting, okay, so Inconsolable has a good super chat. I don't understand this argument. I make a lot more than 75K, but if you give me 2K, it's all going to local businesses. Isn't that the point? Well, I mean, that may be your plan, Inconsolable, but it's absolutely true that there is a diminishing marginal propensity to consume as income increases. And if you, it is generally true that as income goes up, if you give X dollars to people, the less they make, the more likely they are to spend it. And the more they make, the more likely they are to save it. Now, what's wrong is a lot of the tweets that have been going around saying you're going to give $2,000 to people and they're not going to use it for anything because they don't need it. That's widely speaking not true. And but there is absolutely a diminishing marginal propensity to spend. And think if someone makes $1 million a year and you give them $2,000. They're probably just going to save it. If they wanted to blow $2,000 on something, they already have the $2,000 to do it. So that is accurate. It is a proper economic principle, but they're lying about how the program works. They're using not coded, but sort of dog whistle language like borrowed money, or it's not targeted. Like, well, it is targeted to people that make up to $75,000 with a phase out that goes beyond that. But it is true. I mean, I've said before, I didn't qualify for the first stimulus. I wouldn't get any money from this stimulus. And if I did, like in either case, if I got a check for $600 or I got a check for $2,000, it's just going in my bank account. I'm probably putting it in a retirement account and I'll access it, in 30 years or whatever. Like, that is true. But they're talking about under 75,000 per person, 150 for a couple. I think maybe what he's referring to is with kids, it goes up. The limits go up. I don't even know exactly what he's referring to there.
By seeing what works and what doesn't work, we can be better stewards of the taxpayer dollars by spending the money more efficiently and in a more targeted way. This isn't like...
Notice he's been repeating the same stuff for an hour now.
We have an idea about what's needed for individual programs. There was no precedent for this pandemic, no handbook, no clear way to gauge how long this crisis would go on or what would be needed to sustain our response.
Let's get a little more volume here.
After the CARES Act, we knew it made the most sense to hit the pause button and see what worked well, what didn't, and where more help was.
We did. It's been 7 months.
I said there were certain programs like the Paycheck Protection Program that almost immediately dried up. If I'm not mistaken, in 2 weeks, roughly $350 billion.
Yeah, what you guys are saying to me is more interesting than what John Cornyn is saying. So let me focus in on that. Laura says in Canada, it was for people who applied for EI and could prove the loss of money, even small business flat rate that will have tax deducted in January. Carpenter Leo says they're pretending to care about wealthy people getting more money just so poor people don't get any. Yeah, very, very well said. Junior Extreme says, we are like in an abusive relationship where we praise our officials for doing the bare minimum. I love how this argument of where the money never happens when it's for tax breaks or military funding. Of course. Yeah, we've been covering that for a while. The GOP's doing their part to take the happy out of the new year. Oliver says, stumbled across your show a few months ago. Love it and your dry humor. Lots of strength from Switzerland. We're all in this together. Thank you. I love Switzerland. Would love to get back there soon. And then I already got that one. Okay, good. So I think I'm caught up as far as that goes. For Bazilla says, my sister is self-employed hairstylist. $2,000 is the difference between her being able to afford to live if we have another shutdown here in Alaska or not. Inconsolable says, I don't know, $2,000 in Seattle is a lot different than $2,000 in Detroit. 75K is not wealthy here. They really need to take into account cost of living. A lot of 75K income people here are struggling. Well, it starts to phase out at 75, so you would still get money at 75. Inconsolable. Andrew says it's cute that Cornyn, a multimillionaire, thinks a couple making 175 is wealthy. And MH says, I'd love to see him give some numbers on how many American families would qualify for what he's so concerned about. It's all hypothetical BS. Right, that would be interesting. Like, what percentage of families, of all of the recipients that would qualify, what tranches of money would go to what sized cohorts? That may have been done already. That may have been done. Thanks to Zimbardo and Bremen Gibb for the Twitch subs, which puts us at 29. I also want to say thank you to, oh wow, bunch of new members. Jacqueline Blanche has signed up at joinpacman.com. Chad McVeigh, a real Chad. Tony Subia, Elena Minardo, Bonnie Huntington, and Ryan Carson all have signed up, which puts us at 35. Let's get back to the proceedings.
President.
The Senator for Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've heard a lot of revisionist history this afternoon.
Sherrod Brown.
Look
He's very
back
good.
in March when Congress did the right thing. The Senate voted unanimously. Because of our efforts, 13 million people were kept out of poverty. We know that because we did relatively generous unemployment insurance. We did the direct payments. We helped with small business loans. But then this Senate thought its work was done for the year. We begged Senator McConnell month after month after month to come back and help. As I said, 13 million people were kept out of poverty because of the work this Congress did in March of this year. But now, since many of these benefits, especially the unemployment benefit and the direct payments were not continued, of course, those benefits expired in August. And we have seen 8 million people drop into poverty in this country since. And yet this Congress, Senator McConnell refused and refused and refused. I hear this revisionist history that Democrats just want to help people that are already affluent, give them more money. Well, remember back in March, the only amendment that we considered,
By the way, consider the irony that Republicans are saying this bill would give too much money to people who are wealthy and don't need it, but they want a blanket liability protection for huge corporations, even if employees get COVID because they're forced to come into work. That's a handout to even richer people. Like it's all just it's disgusting.
In spite of Senator Cornyn and others' comments, Senator McConnell waited. Finally, we were able to do that. The President of the United States threatened to veto it, causing millions of Americans to fall off their unemployment insurance. I mean, we know all that. It's just important to remember all that. But there's one simple question before the Senate this week: are we going to put more money in people's pockets? The American people made it clear on Election Day they want a government that's on their side. This is our chance to deliver for them, to show people whom we serve that we can make a real difference in their lives, which we did back in March. It's pretty simple.
I'm not seeing closed captions. People asking for closed cap. Oh, here we go. Here we've got them. Very good.
Which we did back in March. It's pretty simple. The best way to help Ohio workers and families is to put more money in their pockets, not in the bank accounts. Largest corporations and the biggest banks, hoping it will trickle down. We know it never does. The CEOs just pay themselves instead. We know, Mr. President, just recently, more good news for America's CEOs who are able again to do stock buybacks, more dividend distributions. A lot of corporations have made a lot of money more power to them during this pandemic, but those are the corporations that continue to get the big tax breaks. We need to instead directly invest in people who make this country work. It helps people pay the bills and stay in their homes and get through this downturn. It injects money into local economies that really need it. The more money people have, the more they spend at small businesses that are hurting. We know this
There's
works.
the demand
It did in
side
the
argument I
spring.
just made.
We came together. We crossed the aisle, passed the CARES Act, expanded unemployment, did direct stimulus checks, keeping 13 million people out of poverty. The bill we passed last week was a good step in that direction, but we should make it stronger. Back in March, my original plan that I tried to negotiate as I sat with Secretary Mnuchin and a handful of other senators was a $2,000 a week, $2,000 per person, adults and children. We called for them to be sent automatically throughout the year, every quarter, as long as we remained in a public health emergency. It's clear now what we could have done and should have done. No one could predict how long this crisis would last. Today, we still aren't sure when everyone will be vaccinated, when the economy will return to full strength. We don't want to sit idly by. We don't want to wonder how bad it could get. We're the strongest, richest country on earth. We have the resources to do something about it. We just need leadership willing to use every tool we have. If they refuse to support this $2,000 per person, if they refuse to support these direct payments, Leader McConnell and Senate Republicans will again make it perfectly clear for the American people whose side they're on. Every time there's a fork in the road, and Senator McConnell and Senate Republicans have to make a decision, either go with corporate interests or go with working families. Every single time they choose corporate interests. They had no problem pouring money into corporate coffers with their tax cut and blowing up the deficit. I remember, Mr. President, just down the hall here, Senator McConnell's office. I remember lobbyists lining up looking for those tax cuts back 3 years ago, and they got those tax cuts. They didn't say anything about government deficits.
For people worried about his voice is always like this. This is his normal voice. He sounds fine to me.
Going into their contributors' pockets, into big corporate coffers, into the wealth for the wealthiest people in this country. They were all too happy to let the government shovel loans to the biggest banks and companies. But in the middle of the worst crisis of our lifetimes, faced with a chance to give money directly to ordinary Americans, my colleagues claim we can't afford it. That's just simply a lie. We're the richest country on earth. I remember Bill Spriggs, economist at Howard University, told the Banking and Housing Committee in September, we didn't win World War II by worrying whether or not we could afford it. We were in a global crisis. We marshaled all our vast resources and talents to rise to meet it. We grew the economy from middle class out. We paid down the debt with raising wages. If we've learned anything from this crisis, it should be that we can do the same again. Americans are tired of being told we can't. It's the only answer that Senator McConnell and Senate Republicans ever have with most people's problems. We can't help you. We can't solve your problem. You're on your own. Let's aim higher. Let's deliver for the people we serve. Let's put $2,000 into their pockets, money that will make such a difference for so many families. It will help a mother worried about how she'll pay back rent. It'll keep a laid-off restaurant worker from turning to a payday lender. It will allow a father to buy a new computer so his kids are better able to learn online. These are millions of real people we swore an oath to serve, who would breathe a little easier this New Year's if we pass this. So let's be clear about the decision today and this week before the Senate. Are we going to give the people we serve $2,000? Or are you going to stand in the way? It's
Sadly,
that
they're
simple.
not.
Let's come together. Let's pass this. Let's make a real difference in people's lives.
There's Sherrod Brown,
the
senator
essence
from
of
Ohio.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
Okay, they're in the middle of a roll call, so I will proceed with some of our business. Thanks to Michael Wood and Sheldrake Smith for signing up at joinpacman.com. And thanks to Squash Nug and Burger Prince for the Twitch subs, which puts us at 39. 3 very powerful streams coming up this coming week. A Monday evening, we will be back, fully back, and I will be covering for you what may be Donald Trump's last political rally ever in the state of Georgia in support of David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. Join me at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time Monday, everywhere that we stream. On Tuesday evening, join me at 7 p.m. as we start to get results from the Georgia Senate elections, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And then Wednesday at 12, I think I'll probably start at 12:45 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be a hectic day. I'll have to do the show very early, I guess, so that then we can get to the official counting of the electoral votes presided over by Vice President Mike Pence. I like that. Mike President Vice Pence. I like that. And we are expecting objections from both Republican members of the House and Republican Senator Josh Hawley, which will trigger, for lack of a better term, a 2-hour debate in the House, a 2-hour debate in the Senate as to whether there will be objections from the standpoint of accepting those votes. So that will be Wednesday around 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and I hope you will join me for that. Andrew says Republicans have given trillions of dollars to billionaires over 50 years of trickle-down. Middle-class wages have been stagnant. Republicans owe us $2,000 1,000 times over. Shan says millionaire Republicans talking like they can understand how difficult it is to survive on $600. Isn't this a bad thing for the Georgia runoff? Honestly, I don't know whether anybody down there is paying attention. I really don't. In other words, are Republican voters seeing this and saying, I might not vote for Loeffler because of what Cornyn said? I don't know. Moo for Me says, just wanted to say thanks, David, for the broadcast. Bernie is an absolute savage. And so are you. Great analysis. Keep it coming, Patriots. And Waller is Me says, my R button takes union breaks. Sorry. Okay, I see what you did there. Very, very much appreciate that one. That's a nice one. They are taking a roll call now in the Senate. Let's listen. There may be nothing to listen to. Thanks to Jessica Whitaker for signing up at joinpacman.com. Appreciate it. Thanks also to Bad Circuits for the Twitch sub. It looks like sound is just simply muted here as they call the roll in the Senate. We have a couple things we can look at in the meantime. Yes, I did get a haircut. This is John Cornyn's brisket. We already looked at that. This is funny. Check out this crazy Tucker Carlson. They're trying to build like a cult of personality around Tucker. Take a look at this. This is from, I guess, the Toilet Paper USA event.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that may work or not, and he may end up being the next Republican nominee, which is crazy. And then here's video of this radiologist, Scott Atlas, who Trump had for a while on his coronavirus whatever. Check out, I guess so in this clip, we're going to see him encourage Thanksgiving gatherings to happen and then say that the surge is proof that he was right. I don't even get it. Let's take a look.
And this kind of isolation is one of the unspoken tragedies of the elderly who are now being told, don't see your family at Thanksgiving. For many people, this is their final Thanksgiving, believe it or not. What are we doing here? I think we have
surges. There was an initial surge in November in Los Angeles County, and then unfortunately we had a great deal of gathering and traveling and holiday parties over the Thanksgiving holiday that created this new surge, and it's reached.
Well, we know what's not working, and that's the lockdowns. I mean, and anybody who thinks that that's something we should be doing is denying that 2 + 2 = 4. And this
man, I don't know what I don't even understand what he's talking about. That's just weird. Very, very odd guy. Glad that he's like resigned or quit or been fired or who knows what's good. I mean, listen, as a radiologist, he may be great. He just doesn't know anything about pandemics. That's unfortunate. As a Georgian, Brian says, I can tell you both Perdue and Loeffler support $2,000 stimulus checks. They said they would vote for them. I won't be voting for them for either for the myriad of other reasons. Yes, well said. So Josh Hawley, Junie McGraw says, so Josh Hawley is less of a right-wing populist and more of an authoritarian sycophant. Yeah, seemingly, as he's willing to stand up on Wednesday and object to the counting of the electoral votes. Maggie says, message to Mr. Texas Brisket Beater. Some who don't need it are giving it to those who do. That's called compassion. I'll send you the definition. Yeah, I don't know that he would understand that. He might understand like charity through his church or something. I don't know. Yeah, imagine hiring a radiologist for COVID response. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It looks like they are still in the middle of a roll call here. And it's not actually clear how long and if this is going to continue. They are asking for the votes to be scheduled for tomorrow. So I think that that's probably going to wrap my coverage. We saw some impassioned speeches from Bernie Sanders and from a number of others. So we are going to keep an eye on whether there will be a vote, and if indeed they get a vote scheduled for tomorrow. I will be back with you guys, and otherwise a lot that's going to be happening into the new year. All right, so I'll keep an eye on this. If a vote gets scheduled, I'll be here with you. Thank you for joining me. Make sure to subscribe free on YouTube and follow if you are watching on Twitch, where we are approaching 100. We're slowly approaching 100,000 followers. All right, everybody, be safe. See you soon.